collection of corpses were mostly frozen shortly after death. However, I think a handful of them by chance had reached at least a certain degree of putrefaction before I managed to get them on ice. Can you say if putrefaction is good or evil? Most people would say it's the natural breakdown, which in the end is a reaction of matter, which is the basis for life on Earth. Thereby, it's neither particularly good nor evil, and that a human being must be perceived as alive if you're to describe that person's qualities and identify that person's ultimate goal. But this is where Mr. Sophistication has a very different opinion. He argues quite well that the ultimate goal for the human being is not prior to death, but after.
You reduce everything human to matter, and that way life disappears, and along with it art, which you value so highly.
Verge, you're a bitter old bastard. You kill art by imposing your moral ruler on life, which I want to free, because art is so immeasurably vaster than we will ever understand. May I illustrate now?
There is no avoiding it, is there?
I don't have a handle on how many processes take part in the decay of a dead human, but I know a bit about dessert wines. In order to achieve the most sublime sweetness and the greatest wines, nature has provided us with various methods. The three most common forms of decomposition are frost, dehydration, and a fungus with the enticingly mysterious name, the noble rot. The first method is the one that in Germany is used to produce ice vine. The method quite simply entails leaving the grapes on the vine for so long that they are exposed to frost for a certain number of nights before they are pressed. This method increases the sugar content in the wine dramatically. It is very risky, as the grapes must have certain qualities in order to be able to withstand the process. On top of that, there can be uncertainty about whether or not the first night's frost lives up precisely to the expectations, etc. The second method is called Trockenbeeren, in which the grapes are allowed to hang on the vine until they dry up and very nearly become raisins. The last method, which for example is essential for the production of sauternes, is a kind of mold that causes grapes to be very full-bodied and have an explosively high sugar content. You could say about all three processes that it's the breakdown that lifts the living grape up to be part of an artwork. You can view the processes that start in a human being after death in the same manner.
Says you, and I still say that without love there is no art. It's not up for debate. The thing you are talking about with the grapes is just nature's method of decomposing. If decomposition is a way to salvation, then what about your house? By God, you cannot convince me that the idea of your first house being torn down was in any way satisfying. Do you claim that it was built to be torn down?
No, of course, it wasn't ideal. And I'm sorry to say that it happened no less than 3 more times. That I started construction and then became doubtful. It was difficult to create the house that I dreamed of. The material didn't do what I wanted it to do. The houses I had drawn had already, at very first detail, something banal, not to say ordinary, about them.
Isn't that what in art you would call epigonism? Your great talent only reached so far. You, artist of all times.
When you were writing, didn't you yourself plan the destruction of your most popular literary work?
The Aeneid was a commissioned work where the ruling power and its ideas were glorified by me to the point where it was no longer art.
But if glorification could demean a work, why should destruction and demolition not be able to do the opposite and create art? Albert Speer invented the theory of ruin value by examining the Greek and Roman ruins and constructed his buildings using both weaker and stronger materials so that they, in 1,000 years, would appear as aesthetically perfect ruins.
Which fortunately were smashed to atoms in mere few years after their construction. Hubris is punished by nemesis, if I may use an old-fashioned expression.
But an artist must be cynical and not worry about the welfare of humans or gods in his art. This talk about the value of ruins makes it too obvious not to mention another subject, the value of icons. The Stuka, without a doubt the world's most beautiful airplane, and to top it off, featuring an eerily sophisticated detail. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
No, by God, that has never interested me, but do tell me about it.
The Stuka was a dive bomber. They say that the pilots actually passed out for a brief moment during the actual dive.
But the detail, per favore.
Fantastic. Incomparable. Notice the sound when the plane dives.
The screeching sound, a result of poor design, if you ask me.
Poor design? Please. On the contrary, the screeching was intrinsic. Sirens were attached to the undercarriage of the plane, purposely designed as a psychological act of war. No one who heard it in action will ever forget that sound. It made the blood run cold in everyone's veins, known as Jericho's trumpet.
Sadistic, but in your eyes, probably a masterpiece.
No, more than a masterpiece. An icon. The person or persons who conceived the Stuka and its functions were icon creators. What I'm getting at is this. As disinclined as the world is to acknowledge the beauty of decay, it's just as disinclined to give credit to those, no, credit to us, who create the real icons of this planet. We are deemed the ultimate evil. All the icons that have had and always will have an impact on the world are, for me, extravagant art. The noble rot.
Stop it! You Antichrist, I don't recall ever having escorted a so thoroughly depraved person as you, Jack.